Hi, everyone. Um, Today we are going to be talking about the dichotomy between an educator's responsibilities and how we protect ourselves versus a student's right and how they can participate and grow as individuals and learn to speak their voice and find their voice. So, um, for me, it kind of boiled down to us using wisdom and helping students understand what they could do. What came to mind for me as I started reading was a music group that I have never liked, never cared for the way they sounded, but a song that they sang was Bless the Beast and the Children. And the reason this song came to mind was because it's easy to begin seeing students as if we are in an adversarial role and we have to protect ourselves. I don't believe that that's true. What I believe is we need to educate them, we need to encourage them, we want them to find their voice. And so, as I thought about it, we need to see ourselves as their intellectual guides. We need to help them embrace big ideas because it's big ideas that change history. One of my favorite books for young children is Dear Mr. Hinshaw. And it's a book that really does help students understand the power of teachers. So if we model mindfulness, kindness, and acceptance of students, if we correct them with gentleness, I think a lot of problems that we have tend to go away. I've had a lot of good teachers in my life. I was widowed when I was 24 years old, and I had I had two young sons and another son on the way. It was a tragic time, and I had just was on my way to getting my first bachelor's degree. And I had known since the time I read the Boxcar Children in, I think, second grade, I was going to be an English teacher. I immediately thought, I've got to go back to school. I've got to become a nurse. Nurses always have jobs. So I was going to do that beginning in the fall. So in the summer, I decided I was going to take one philosophy course, just one final fling. And I had a professor named Herb Frith. And by the time I got through that course, I was like, nope, I'm getting my master's degree and I'm going to be an English professor. 10 years later, he actually officiated at my second wedding. So be Herb Frith, be Mr. Hinshaw, be that teacher that they never forget. And I think a lot of problems go away. We never know when a student walks through a door what they are going through. And I think a lot of behaviors that we see as ridiculous are behaviors that are a result of things that we can't even imagine. So be kind always. That's what I've always tried to do. And some of the worst behaviors are some of the greatest pleas for help. And so I'm not giving anyone who's watching this video that advice. I always am giving it to myself as I walk through the door every morning. Rudolf Dreikurs is someone's work that I have studied for many years. And there are 4 misdirected goals of behavior. Then their attention, their power, their revenge, their avoidance. And those goals tend to be very easy to redirect. And so we can't expect adult behavior from adolescents. And many times these students are trying to use their voices in inappropriate ways because we haven't taught them how to use them correctly. If we can assist them in understanding that We get it, they want to be heard. Let's find a way that you can communicate so that people are willing to listen, because we want to hear you. Many times they will redirect themselves. If we stop seeing children as misbehaving, annoying enemies and start encouraging them, it's amazing what they start to do. Many times we say, I teach so I can change lives. I stopped saying that a long time ago. And I started saying, children are the ones that are teaching and changing lives. If we start seeing these children as the game changers, because they're the future, it becomes so different. So in my classrooms, I set expectations that create an environment of safety and acceptance. I let my students know it is never okay not to be kind. And for years, I have shown a TED Talk at the very beginning of the year by Roberto Kuzman, and it's the name of it is Teaching English Without Teaching English. And his philosophy is we can attack ideas all day long, but we cannot attack other people. So when things get tense, when a student is saying something and exercising his free speech, I just remind everyone, let's take a breath. Let's consider opposing opinions. Let's let students practice new behaviors. And I always remind myself, this is not about me. Students need space and time to sort things out. Sometimes it looks very different than I would hope it would look. But these are children, so it is my responsibility to help them use their voice rather than have a tug of war. If I was a piano teacher, they're practicing their first concerto, or they're writing their first novel, or they're considering how they're building their first skyscraper. I'm just helping them practice. So one of the articles that we read on human rights principles, I'm respecting them, I'm treating them with fairness, I'm letting them have some autonomy, I'm treating them with dignity. And it takes away so much of my judgment. They've already found me. They've already looked me up. They've looked all of us up. They haven't looked up what I did yesterday, because when I came back to teaching, I turned all of that off. But you can't turn off the past. They came in within a month of me teaching and said, we know who you contributed to in the last presidential campaign. And I said, okay, now let's go back to work. And I didn't need to engage with that. It wasn't necessary. So a lot of things can be deflected. I studied a group of books called Run, Rabbit, Run, Rabbit is Rich, but they were about a young man named Harry Angstrom, and he was despicable. His behavior was so bad. I look at my students and I remind myself of Harry Angstrom when he first got out of high school, and his accomplishments meant nothing. He was a track star, he was a basketball star, and suddenly he was nothing. What should have happened, he realized, wasn't going to happen. He had no one to support him. The best teachers could have made a difference in his life. He became wealthy, it brought him no happiness. So his entire life he had no why. I want to help students have a why. There have been so many court cases, and we have seen throughout recent history, last 50 years, whatever the political climate is, the court rulings change. Shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it is. The interpretations change. What if in our schools, in our classrooms, censorship doesn't change because we're there to encourage our students. We're there to help them. We don't have a conniption fit over what they're saying. We're asking them, do you really believe that? Is that really the message you're trying to convey? Catherine Ross wrote a book, and in this book she published an infographic. This is on a film, and how many layers of censorship it goes through while it's gone from writing the script to its debut. It's layer after layer. So censorship is there. We have to respect others. But there is so much going on and so much fear that's going on. This was an article that was in Education Weekly. It was published in December of 2023. And one of the things that really surprised me was the tone of some of the comments that were made in the very beginning of this article. So just notice this in the very first excerpt. This teacher had to hide in a locked office for hours as hundreds of students searched for her after seeing her Facebook post with a pro-Israel poster. And this was from the previous weekend when she had demonstrated. Come on. We know students are watching us. She's a professional. If she wants to demonstrate, that is her choice. But she is not a victim here. She did not need to post this on social media. She was teaching high school. So if she wants to demonstrate, and if she wants to post it on social media, she may very well have some consequences. And if she was in a classroom, did she not have a cell phone that she could call for help? She needed to hide for hours? I'm not buying it. So we don't get to be victims if we are going to do behaviors that are going to create adolescents then hunting us down. So it may be unfortunate, but we have chosen a field that puts us in jeopardy when we put ourselves out there in political situations. So I'm not even saying she shouldn't have been at the rally. I'm not saying she shouldn't have protested, but to then put it on social media may not have been her best choice. Same way in Maryland, the Council on American Islamic Relations filed an Equal Employment Opportunity Commission complaint alleging that the school system placed a Muslim teacher of Egyptian national origin on administrative leave because of her email signature line, which expresses support for Palestinians. If this is on a professional school email address, is that okay? So professionally, we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing, and is it okay? Now, if it was her personal one, maybe that's not okay. But as professionals, we have to make good choices. So when we do make good choices, we can always ask ourselves, did I do everything I could do so that I do not have to answer for this? And if we are answering, we can say, what could I have done so that I am not stressed out? So in Wichita, Kansas, USD 259 does things that help to clarify clear lines for teachers and for students. On their webpage, they have clear expectations of these are the behavior expectations of students. This is CHAMPS, those are for elementary students. This is ACHIEVE, those are for students in senior high school. They encourage parents and students to read those. There is an entire day of orientation. The very first day of school, whether you are a freshman or a senior and you have seen it 4 years in a row, you're going to see it again. There is a student code of conduct. It is sent to parents. It is signed. It must be acknowledged. Students and parents should be familiar with these policies. They are sent out. Policy 1462, 1464, 1465. There are vape monitors in every restroom. They go off if students are in there vaping. It does not matter if a student vapes. If they find that the vape goes off and there's 2 students in there, they have stated they have a right to look at students' personal property, and if a student has vape equipment, they are both going to be in class in school suspension. The first week of school, there are going to be student-created social contracts in every single class. Students will go into groups of 4, and they will create these contracts with agreement between those 4 students. Then the students will come together, group of 20, 24 students, and they will vote until they have an agreement of 6. Then the teacher will add 2 of his or her own that are very important to him or her. They will now end up with 6 class agreements. They will be posted on a 23 by 28 post-it page. They will be hanging in the room. There will be 2 student-elected enforcers so that when a student, because a student will, when a student breaks the agreement, then there will be consequences. Now, that takes a lot of the pressure off of the teachers. It also holds students accountable because students have all signed, all around the edges, students have signed this post-it piece of paper. So it doesn't take all of it isn't a be-all, end-all, but it certainly does help. As teachers, it is our obligation as professionals to know what the expectations are and to know what the law is. We must know what we should be saying and what we shouldn't be saying. We are not there to tell students what we think. We are there to help students learn how to think. In addition to that, it is mandated by our union. If we work for USD 259, the union represents us, and they are very clear. These are controversial issues. You are not to be discussing critical race theory because we have negotiated that with USD 259, and we are not to be talking about that. So do not even say that phrase. We are not to be teaching sexual orientation. So do not teach sexism. We should know what these guidelines are. I teach for the Catholic Diocese. I don't have to agree with everything that the Catholic Diocese believes. In fact, I don't. There are things that I don't agree with. But I signed on. And when I signed on at 100%. Because those parents and those students are counting on me to adhere to what they believe in. I may not be 100% good Catholic. So I may not 100% be all in. But when I walk through those doors, I am an advocate. I promised I would be. That's called keeping my word. So that is just being it's being a good representative to the students. So throughout history, when the stakes are high, answers do not come easily. I have a favorite book that is called Crucial Conversations. I always talk about it with my students because we often, when we are invested in any topic, we act as if many times there's only one solution. We don't see the gray areas. It teaches students so much to listen to opposing viewpoints. So when new things come to light, and we have had some new, well, they're not new issues, they've been going on for many, many years. But over the last 8 or 9 months, there have been demonstrations, and things are being viewed in a different light in the United States by many people. And I believe we are going to have some court cases that are going to be hitting the courts, and we're going to have more demonstrations than we have already had. There have been graduation diplomas and credentials withheld from students at colleges. I think it could be I think very easily we could see lawsuits being filed at the university level. And emotions are very high right now on this topic, and rightly so. Consequently, this could be discussed at high school levels or even middle school levels. So as far as controversial topics go, I didn't walk into a philosophy class and start discussing calculus. Neither would I go into a calculus class and discuss philosophy. So I think that is one thing for us to remember as teachers. Are we on the right topic in the right classes? If I'm in a class to teach art, I should be pretty much teaching art. If I'm in a class to teach math, unless something momentous has happened within in that day, I should remain on topic. That way, I have less justification for cultivating political discussions in my classroom. And I can say, let's stay on topic. That takes away that discussion of I have a right to say what I want to say. Yes, you have a right to say what you want to say, but right now you have a right to study math. We're in math class. If I am teaching Canterbury Tales in English, well, we are discussing religion, we are discussing political events. But do we need to be discussing current political events? And so I would steer students back to Chaucer. What was Chaucer talking about? Most situations, the way I view things, discussions need to remain within the domain of the subject matter that is being taught, if at all possible. And students do need to be heard, but they don't need to hear my viewpoint. What's appropriate is for me to help students hear each other. And so that's where I go when we are discussing current topics and when students want to be heard. I hope this has been timely. I hope it has been helpful. I did miss one of my references, so there are 2 reference pages, this full one, and then if you look on the second slide, the one that I missed the infogram, and I went back and added in the USD 259, even though I felt like it was self-explanatory. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. As always, I always have to think about things for 3 days before I end up posting them, so I post a little bit late. But have a wonderful week ahead of you. Bless you all.